Egyptian Heaven and Hell by E. A. Wallis Budge. The Book of Duat, Chapter 11. The 11th division of the Duat, which is called Ren Qarat Yipet Khatu. And I will correct that if that turns out to be something I need to correct. The 11th division of the Duat, which is passed through by the sun entity during the 11th hour of the night, is introduced by 3 lines of text, which read, "The majesty of this great entity taketh up his position in this circle, and he addresseth words unto the demons who are in it. The name of the gate of the city through which this great entity hath entereth is Sken Duateu. The name of this city is Ra'en Qarat Yipet Khatu. The name of the hour of the night which guideth this great entity is Sebet Nebet Uya Kesfet Sebe Ma Perdef." In the middle of the registry are the boat of the sun, in which stands the entity under a canopy formed by the body of the great serpent Mehen. On his head are horns and a disc. On the high prow of the boat is a disc encircled by a ras, the serpent from the crown thing, which is called Pustwa. The text reads, and before we get to the text, let's look at the sunboat for this. And, okay, and let's look back. We have okay, so we have Nebet, or Dwara Nebet Uya Katsef Tas Biam Mapurat Tief. So that is the great entity, and we have the name here. What's the name of the place? Oh, okay, I found it. Khatu. Okay. Let's hope I remember that. So the text reads, "This great entity journeyeth on his way in the city in this picture, and his sailors, who are the entities, guide him into the eastern horizon of the sky. The star Pesdet, which is on its boat, guideth this great entity into the ways of the darkness, which gradually lighten and illuminate those who are on the earth." And remember that Khatu is the name of this division. I didn't necessarily make that clear, did I? The 12 entities which marched before the boat of the entity bearing the serpent Mehen on their heads. You know, that serpent you always see around on the boat, or maybe you sometimes see it, but you have mahni. You have simsim. Oh, you have ses mussim. You have simsim. Okay, because you have it twice. So you have S, SM, SM. And then the third is suksenu, then shadu, then yama, amu, vradai, shapu, nadru, achpi, rumnue, and then you have fa. So you see them in 3 groups of 4. This bundled serpent. Fa is a sort of water bearer, isn't it? But it holds the serpent different. Fa and mahni hold it different. But the text reads, those are in this picture in the front of this great entity. They carry the serpent Mahanta on their heads into the city, and they travel onwards in the following of Ra into the eastern horizon of the sky. This entity crieth to them by their names, and he decreeth for them what they have to do. And Ra saith unto them, O ye who keep ward over your serpent figures with your 2 hands, lift up your heads, whose hands are strong, whose feet are firm, who perform the journeys which ye are bound to make, and who make long your steps as you go. Unite yourselves to your offerings in the hall of the eastern horizon. Their work is to make the serpent Mahan to travel to the eastern hall of the horizon, and they unite themselves to their habitations after this great entity hath passed through the darkness and hath taken up his place in the horizon. And aside from the symbol of fire, a very common thing when you see mention of the jinn in ancient Egyptian is a snake. Okay, the Simnaban hut, that thing right there, the hut. So we're talking about the temple of Simnabat. And we have Simshut. The serpent, is it Simshut or Sumshut? On his back rests the red crown, and in an angle of it is a human head, the serpent Simnabhut. On his back rests the white crown. On his back rests the white crown from which each side of the project, from each side which projects a bearded human head. The text reads, these are the hidden images of her, Horus, which are at the second door of the thick darkness on the holy road of Sais. When this great entity crieth out to them, these hidden heads make their appearance, and they swallow their own forms. That's how they disappear. So, let's see the name here. We got Sasait. Sais? Maybe that's the Greek form, the Sais. But you got the S, and then the different S, A sound, and then the E, and then the T sound. Nut of the phallus, wearing the red crown. 5, 6, and then we have 6, and we have nut of the red crown, wearing the red crown. Nut of the white crown, wearing the white crown. Nut sure meaning young, wearing the white crown. The text reads, "Those are in this picture of the door, in the form which her made. When this great entity crieth out to them by their names, they spring into life at the sound of his voice, and it is they who guard the holy gate of the city of Ait, which is unknown and cannot be seen and cannot be looked at, above the upper register of the line of text which reads," but the nut forms. Remember the sky demoness. Hadit being the earth demon. "The hidden circle of the duat, through which this entity maketh his journey, so that he may come forth into the eastern horizon of the sky. It swalloweth externally its images in the presence of the entity Ruk, who dwelleth in the city, and it giveth them to those who are born and come into being in the earth. Whosoever shall make an exact copy of these forms according to the representations of the same at the eastern portion of the hidden palace of the Duat, and shall know it, shall be a spirit well equipped, both in heaven and earth, unfailingly and regularly and eternally. In the upper register are the entity Apernamjata, above whose body at the neck is a disc, from which is proceeded 2 human heads, the one wearing the white crown, the other the red crown, and in his hand he holds the scepter. Oh, is it Oost? Is it Oost? That scepter? And is left the emblem of life, the ox. The text reads, "He who is in this picture standeth up the raw, and is never displaced from his place in the Duat." And Upper Hernab Ta. Okay. So we have that double-faced one here, sort of a Janus figure. A huge serpent with 2 pairs of human feet and legs and a pair of large wings. By its side stands an entity with a disc upon its head, and on each side of the head is a jut, the 63/64ths fraction I thing. His hands are stretched out at right angles to his body, and each hand touches the end of one of the serpent's wings. The text reads, "When this great entity crieth out to him that is in this picture, the form of the entity proceedeth from his back, and afterwards it swalloweth itself." The words ox from ooh. Oh no, ooh. Onx Femer. How do you pronounce that thing? I know how the t, and may form the name of the winged serpent, a serpent with a mummified entity seated on his back. Above the entity is written Techits, its body, and by the tail of the serpent is Sheddua. The text reads, "Digitus herself is above the stars." The 8 stars which are about the heads of the 2 serpents. Her work is to cast the living ones to Ra every day. She then swalloweth her forms in this city of the 11th hour. One of those who follow the so-called God. And you have that plate there. So DJTS would have how that body is, how body is pronounced, is spelled. The entity Tepue, the two-headed. One head faces to the right and the other to the left. The entity Kunum Renit, ram-headed, holding the, is it Usur? In his right hand, and Ankhs in his left. So the scepter and the Ankhs. The entity Nurta, with both hands raised in adoration. The entity From Chanaf. The other thing is a ch, who has two snake heads in the place of a human head. His hands and arms are concealed. The entity Yipt, the Uwe, his hands and arms are concealed. The entity Murnaaf, in the form similar to the preceding. Yunaaf, in similar form. The entity Rasit Yifu, in similar form. Remember the Yifu, the sun entity, the dead sun. The entity Dwa Hru, in similar form. And Tepui. Let's get a closer look at what they're saying about Tepui. The entity Ma, the entity Masukste, the entity Hapa. The text which refers to these reads, okay, so we have 11 entities to look at. The double-snaked one, the Uefam Khanaf, and then Nurta, then Kendem Renit, and then we're going to have Reset Yafu, Ya'en Uef, Muren Ya'uef, Yipet Ta Ue, Hata, Masakste, Ma, and Tawahuru. So let's try to get these in the order that I shared them. Those who are in this picture doth this great entity call by their names, saying, my hidden appearances and my secret radiance cause your life. O ye who advance to your shadows, who are free to move, are shrouded in respect of the arms by the forms in his holy places, whose breaths are of the utterances of my mouth, which giveth life, and ye speak therewith, whose offerings are on my boat, whereon your souls live, ye who have water at the source of Nu, wherein the dwellers of the Duat wash with shouts of joy, perform that which is in your right to do, and let your souls be in the following of my created things. Their work in the Duat is to advance the hidden things of this great entity to the hidden house each day when they appear with this great entity in the upper heaven. A demoness seated on the back of the two serpents, which lie by the side and appear to issue from her feet. Her left hand grasps the body of one serpent, and in her right, held up before her face. Her name is Nabat Ankhs Eu. Maybe it's Nabat Ankhs U. In the front are three other entities who similarly are seated. Their names are Nibsku, Nert Abeu, and Mernut Nutchuru. And before we get to that text, Nebetku and Nebet Onxiu, Mernutchuru, Nut Abu. How did I cover that part of that? Those who are in this picture have their arms on the earth and their feet and legs in the darkness. When this great entity crieth to them in their own bodies, they utter cries. They do not depart from their places, but their souls live in the word of the forms which come forth from their feet every day. When the shades appear, the winds which are in the Duat cease from the faces of these demonesses. And the lower register, Horus, hawk-headed and wearing a disc, leaning with his right shoulder upon a long staff, holding in his left hand a boomerang, one end of which is in the form of a serpent's head. A huge serpent called the everlasting Set, the devil. Called Horus and Osiris because the S at the end is just how you typically had the Greek. But remember, just like Jesus, you have the ps sometimes, or you sometimes have another letter at the end, depending on the way it is in the sentence. So standing upon his tail, and before we... Horus and Set. Well, Set, Ha. So the eternal, the Ha, Yah, Ha, is where we get Yahweh from. But there are other entities labeled with eternity, right? A large pit with a vaulted roof filled with fire, wherein the enemies of Ra, two enemies, and three or more. Yeah, if there's two, but we have three lines of Ra being consumed. The enemy, the name of this pit is Hadit Ketitis. Okay, where is that? Hadit Ketits. And HDT, is it a double I? Oh, he's spitting into the fire. Sort of like a magical act, I guess. And is presided over by an entity with head of a lioness, who holds in her hands a large knife and pours fire into it from her mouth. Oh, okay. T. Okay, so that's close. You don't have the p, but you have maybe a oo in the middle there, but D, P, T, T, K, T, the E sound, because you have the double read, and then you have the T, and then you have that S. A smaller pit with a vaulted roof filled with fire, wherein the enemies are being consumed. The name of the pit is Handus. Oh, it should end etus, if that one with 3 lines ends likewise. And is presided over by an entity with a human head, who holds in her hands a large knife and pours fire into it from her mouth. And there, right there, so we can see. A pit smaller to that were above wherein the souls ba ah eu oh ba ah u, we'd want the plural there, are being consumed. The name of this pit is Ha Duncan Eat. Ha Duncan Eat. And is presided over by an entity as in number 4. And okay, what's different? Okay, we have souls instead of enemies there. So we'd think that they're being treated more generally instead of specifically. A smaller pit wherein the shades or shadows are being consumed. The name of this pit is Hadaput. Namyat Sut, and is presided over. Okay. Hadaput Namyat Sut, and is presided over an entity as in number 4. A similar pit, okay, we got on the left there. A similar pit wherein the heads, Depu, are being consumed. Depu being the wider plural. The name of this pit is Hadaput Safus, and is prepared over by an entity as in number 4. So, a very large pit with a vaulted roof filled with fire, in which are immersed, head downwards, 4 male figures. The name of this pit is Yunt Suksad U, are the valley of those who are turned upside down. Okay, in the 9th part here, we have 4 entities, each one with the sign for Eastern Desert on her head. The names are Psi, Rakit, Pacha'uith, and Sa'it. Remember what we said about Sa'it earlier, but Sa'it, so not the S in front of the Sa'it in this case. So those 4. And the 10th part, the entity But Utuf, holding a scepter, the Ust, in his left hand, and the sign of life, Ankhs, in his right. The text reads, okay, I'm actually going to finish this. I thought maybe I wasn't going to finish this in one video, but look at that. So, when we look at the ending, her utuf with the crown there, the one with the hands out, you got the sa'it, you got psi, you have rakit, you have that's put. That's put. That's not her. Putter Sha'us and the pit of fire of the Yunt Sexedu. And this final text. The majesty of this entity crieth the decree, saying, hack in pieces and cut asunder the body of the enemies and the members of the dead who have been turned upside down. O my father Yasir, and let me come forth from it. Well, I don't take Yasir as my father. No Cyrus here. Sirius. And let me come forth from it. My father, having been helpless, hath smitten you. He hath cut up your bodies. He hath hacked into pieces your spirits and your soul, and hath scattered in pieces your shadows, and hath cut in pieces your heads. Ye shall never more exist. Ye shall be overthrown, and ye shall be cast down headlong into the pits of fire, and ye shall not escape therefrom, and ye shall not be able to flee the flames which are in the serpent Set Ha. The fire of Hurt Ketus is against you, and the flames of Hurt Hadus are against you. The blazing heat of Hurt Namyatus is against you. Hurt Sephus is against you, and she stabs at you, and hacks you into pieces, and cuts you up in such wise that ye shall never again see those who are living upon the earth. As for those who are in this picture in the Duat, it is the majesty of Hru Duate who giveth the order for their slaughter each day. Those who are in this picture, who are depicted with the enemies of Yasir in the Duat, and with Harutuf, who is the guardian of this circle, live by means of the voice of the by the voice of the enemies, and by the cries of entreaty of the souls and shadows which have been placed in their pits of fire. So